The movie kicks off with Andy searching for something when suddenly, the boy standing behind him starts slicing fruit in a strange way. Instead of eating just the fruit, he bizarrely chews on a knife as well, injuring his mouth in the process. Shocked and terrified, Andy quickly pulls the knife out of the boy's mouth and tries to rush him outside to get help. But the boy resists, refusing to leave the house. Somehow, Andy manages to drag him to the doorway, only to discover a strange white circle drawn outside. The boy can't seem to cross it. The moment he tries, his body begins to convulse violently, as if some unknown force, or even something inside him, was fighting back. Horrified by what he's witnessing, Andy panics. And then, the story flashes back to 1 week earlier. We see Andy's father, who mysteriously dies while taking a shower. The tragedy leaves Andy shaken and deeply stressed. He and his sister, Piper, are soon taken in by a woman named Laura, who has already adopted a mute boy, the same one we saw earlier. Laura also had a daughter once, but she tragically drowned in the swimming pool. Hearing this devastates Andy, but what unsettles him more is Laura's bizarre behavior. Things go from strange to downright disturbing when Laura introduces him to her dead dog, which she has preserved as if it were still alive. Later, as they wander to the back of the property, Andy and Piper come across a chilling sight. A boy wearing nothing but pants, sitting inside the empty pool. He's clutching a cat so tightly that the poor animal is in pain, crying out in agony. Laura rushes in, snatches the cat away, and we finally see the boy, Oliver, turn his head toward Andy. The intensity of his stare is so unsettling that Andy can't help but feel uneasy. When Piper later asks what Oliver looks like, Laura lies, describing him as a sweet, curly-haired child, when in reality he looks nothing of the sort. Soon after, Laura begins measuring everyone's height, which Andy finds odd. She then gives Piper the room that once belonged to her late daughter, while Andy takes the one next door. That evening, while Andy is on the phone with his friends, he gets the unnerving sense that Laura is quietly eavesdropping. When he stands up to grab something, Laura suddenly snatches his phone and starts scrolling through his messages. Furious, Andy warns her to never touch his things again. That night, Laura takes Oliver downstairs, where she plays an old video of some strange ritual for him. The very same thing happens the following night. She even escorts Oliver to a storage room outside the house, which Andy finds suspicious. The next morning, Andy wakes up only to discover something disturbing. His bed is soaked. He was surprised because he had never done anything like that before. Later, when he went into the bathroom to shower, the sound of water falling from the shower instantly reminded him of his father, and that memory terrified him all over again. A few days later, we see that Andy and Piper's father's funeral has taken place, but the two siblings weren't sad at all. In fact, they felt a strange sense of relief because their father had always been abusive, constantly beating them. His death, instead of breaking them, had given them an unusual freedom. During the funeral, Laura tried to make Andy kiss his father's forehead one last time, but Andy refused. Instead, Laura clipped a lock of their father's hair as a keepsake before the burial. On the way back from the funeral, Laura noticed how quiet and withdrawn Andy and Piper were. To lighten the mood, she suggested something unsettling. Let's go home and celebrate. When someone dies, we must celebrate our peace, otherwise grief will consume us. And strangely enough, they went along with it. That night, the house turned into a bizarre scene. They danced, laughed, and even got drunk. Piper passed out early, but Andy and Laura stayed up, sharing deeply personal confessions. Laura admitted that ever since her daughter had died, her mind had never been the same. She said she would do anything just to hear someone call her mother again. Andy, in turn, revealed his own pain, how his father had been torturing him since childhood. He confessed that instead of sadness, his father's death had brought him a sense of relief, like a heavy weight had finally been lifted off his shoulders. After opening up, Andy went to bed. But Laura did something disturbing. She urinated in a container and poured it onto Andy's bed. The next morning, Andy woke up confused and horrified to see the sheets wet again. He worried that something was wrong with him, that maybe he had developed some strange habit overnight. Every morning, he carried his wet clothes downstairs to wash them, and each time Laura pretended to know nothing. In fact, she and Piper laughed at him, making him feel even more humiliated. Andy tried to take baths to clear his head, but every time he stepped into the bathroom, he saw visions of his dead father standing under the shower. To avoid it, he began bathing outside under the garden tap instead. One morning, while washing himself outside, Andy looked up and noticed Oliver staring at him from a window. Suddenly, A fly buzzed near Andy's face, but Oliver smacked it with his bare hand and then ate it. The sight disturbed Andy. Something about Oliver felt off. At first, he thought Oliver might just be hungry, so he took him to the kitchen and cut up some fruit for him. But instead of eating the fruit, Oliver fixated on the knife itself, gripping it tightly. He clutched it so strangely that the blade cut into his hand, drawing blood. Andy, unsettled, brushed it off, without realizing how wrong everything really was. Andy was rummaging through the back cabinet, looking for something else to eat, when Oliver suddenly did something horrifying. He began chewing on the knife along with the fruit. His mouth tore open, blood spilling out. This was the very same disturbing scene we saw at the beginning of the movie. Panicked, Andy yanked the knife from Oliver's mouth and hands, then frantically tried to drag him outside to get help. But the moment Oliver reached the edge of the white circle outside the house, his body started to convulse. His health rapidly deteriorated, as though an unseen force was tearing him apart. That's when Laura arrived. She shoved Andy aside, snapping at him. "You made a huge mistake trying to take him out of the house." She then dragged Oliver down into the basement, pulled out an old videotape, and began playing a ritual. Upstairs, Andy stared at the blood-soaked knife in terror, his fear growing heavier. When he later went to check on Oliver in his room, Laura suddenly stepped out, blocking him. Her voice was sharp and cold. "Listen carefully. Never enter his room again. Never take him anywhere. He's under my care." Inside, we get a glimpse of her so-called care. She drew strange circles on Oliver's forehead and whispered incantations under her breath. It wasn't care at all. It was ritual. It was black magic. That night, Laura crossed a terrifying line. She took the lock of Andy's dead father's hair, the one she cut at the funeral, and forced it into Oliver's mouth. Meanwhile, Andy was still trapped in his own fears. He went to the bathroom and turned on the shower, but the sound of water instantly pulled him back to that night his father died. His head spun, the memories too vivid. Moments later, he collapsed. When Andy woke up, he was in a hospital bed, his body trembling. The doctors, unable to calm him, sedated him. Hours later, when he regained consciousness, Laura peered at his side. She smiled gently and handed him a perfume bottle. "Here," she said softly. "Put this on, you'll feel better." But Andy wasn't reassured. He looked at her and asked something strange, almost desperate. "Promise me you'll never let Piper go out in the rain." He had been haunted by visions, dark thoughts that if Piper stepped into rain, she would die. Laura ignored his plea. The moment they returned home, she deliberately took Piper outside into the rain. They laughed and danced in it together, and for a fleeting moment, Laura seemed to see her dead daughter in Piper. That night, she dressed Piper in her daughter's old clothes. Smiling sweetly, she asked, "Would you like to stay with me forever? Would you like to call me Mother?" Then she added in a coaxing voice, "Look, Andy will turn 18 in 3 months. After that, he can legally take custody of you. But I want this decision to be yours." Her eyes glimmered with expectation, waiting for Piper to call her mother. But instead, Piper whispered Andy's name. The sweetness drained from Laura's face for a split second, anger flickering in her eyes. Still, she forced a smile and spoke in her usual sugary tone. "Whatever you wish will happen, dear." Soon after, Laura led Piper into a strange, hidden room. There, she opened a freezer and urged her to touch what was inside. Piper reached in, and her hand brushed against something cold and horrifying. It wasn't food. It wasn't ice. It was a human corpse. Laura's own daughter's corpse, preserved like some grotesque keepsake, was hidden inside that freezer. Days later, Andy finally recovered and returned home. The first thing he noticed were Piper's shoes by the door, still covered in wet mud. His heart sank. That was the proof. Laura had ignored his warning and taken Piper out in the rain. From that moment, Andy's suspicions about her deepened. That night, Laura resumed her dark rituals on Oliver. She traced circular markings onto his forehead with her finger, whispering strange incantations while an old ritual video played in front of her. As the chanting grew stronger, Oliver's eyes turned completely blood red, as though something inhuman had possessed him. Later, Laura applied the very same perfume she had once gifted Andy. Then she crept into Piper's room and, without warning, struck her hard across the eye before quickly slipping away. By morning, Piper's eye was swollen badly. Alarmed, Andy pressed her. "Who did this to you?" Since Piper couldn't see, she could only identify people by their scent. She carefully smelled them both and accused Andy. To her, the scent matched him. What she didn't realize was that Laura had planned it perfectly. The perfume was a trick. Laura then twisted Piper's mind further, whispering poisonous words. "Andy is becoming just like your father. Remember how he used to torture you? Andy will do the same. You shouldn't go with him, even when he turns 18. You belong with me." While Laura was manipulating Piper, Andy's attention was fixed on the window. Outside, Oliver was bathing, and there was something unnatural about him. Strange growths covered his head. Andy grabbed his phone and started recording. To his horror, horns had begun sprouting from Oliver's skull. He had transformed into something demonic. Andy wanted to expose the truth, but Laura caught him. She struck him, snatched the phone, and tried to silence him. In desperation, Andy lashed out, throwing punches. But when it came to hitting Laura directly, he froze, his fist slamming into the wall instead. Hearing the commotion, Piper assumed the worst. She thought Andy had attacked Laura. Believing her brother had turned violent, she lashed at him in anger. Broken and hurt by Piper's mistrust, Andy left the house. He went straight to the council head, the same woman who had once granted Laura custody of the children. Andy begged her to listen. On the office wall, he spotted a poster of missing children. Among the faces was a boy who looked exactly like Oliver. Andy pointed at it. "That's him. Laura kidnapped this child. She's been performing strange rituals on him. Please, you have to believe me." But the old woman dismissed his claims. Frustrated, Andy challenged her. "Fine. If you don't believe me, come with me and see for yourself." Back at the house, chaos had erupted. Oliver had gone feral. His belly was grotesquely bloated, and he tore through the house like a wild animal, devouring everything in sight. He ripped apart the kitchen, shoving anything edible into his mouth. When Laura tried to intervene, Oliver lunged at her, clamping his jaws down on her arm. Screaming in fear, she barely managed to shove him off and barricade herself inside a room. Outside, Oliver gnawed at the furniture, even chewing to the wooden table in his frenzy. Inside the locked room, Laura bandaged her bleeding arm. She glanced toward the window and froze. Oliver was standing right there, staring at her with those monstrous eyes. Quickly, she traced circles onto glass while chanting. To her relief, the ritual worked. Oliver slowly calmed, slipping back under her control. She then led him into a secret chamber hidden within the house. Meanwhile, Andy, determined to save Piper, called her to warn her about Laura. But when the phone clicked on, it wasn't Piper's voice he heard. It was Laura. Laura quickly realized that Andy wasn't coming back alone. He had brought someone with him. If they searched the house, her dark secret would finally be exposed. Acting fast, she began frantically scrubbing and cleaning, erasing every trace of the chaos Oliver had caused. By the time Andy and the councilwoman arrived, the house looked spotless, as though nothing had ever happened. Laura even pretended she had just stepped out of the shower, her hair damp, her face calm. While the woman distracted Laura with small talk, Andy slipped downstairs into the storeroom. What he saw froze the blood in his veins. Oliver was crouched there, gnawing on the raw corpse of a dead child. Andy's horrified scream echoed through the house. The councilwoman rushed toward the sound, but Laura tried to stop her. "It's nothing. Let me check first," she insisted, blocking her way. But her resistance only deepened the woman's suspicion. Pushing past, the woman entered the room and saw the horror with her own eyes. Now she believed Andy. She wanted to run, to call the police immediately. But before she and Andy could escape, Laura rammed her car into them from behind. The old woman died instantly, her body crushed under the impact. Andy survived, but he was badly injured. Without hesitation, Laura dragged him to a nearby water trough and forced his face under the surface, holding him down until he couldn't breathe. Meanwhile, Piper woke up upstairs. She searched the house for Andy, but instead ran into Oliver, reaching out to identify him by touch. She hoped it was her brother, but what she felt only unsettled her further. At that moment, Laura appeared. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. Angrily, Piper snapped back. "You lied to me. Oliver isn't a beautiful child with curly hair. He's bald, his face feels strange, and he's nothing like you said. Where's my brother, Andy?" Laura seized her roughly and began dragging her toward a locked room. Terrified, Piper broke free and bolted into the bathroom, locking the door behind her. There, her foot brushed against something. Kneeling down, she reached out. Her hand touched braces. Her heart skipped a beat. It was Andy. The truth hit her hard. Laura wasn't savior. She was a monster. Moments later, the lock rattled. Laura opened the door with a set of keys. This time, she didn't bother hiding the truth. With wild eyes, she confessed, "I made a pact with the demon. He promised to return my daughter to me. But in exchange, I needed an innocent soul. That soul is you, Piper. I brought you here so you could die and my daughter could live again." Piper's blood ran cold. Desperate, she grabbed a glass and slashed at Laura, then tried to escape. But she tripped over a table and hit the floor unconscious. Laura carried her to the backyard pool, now overflowing from the rain. Holding Piper's head under the water, she tried to drown her. Piper suddenly regained consciousness, thrashing and pleading for her life. Please, please, Mom, let me go. Those words shattered Laura. For so long, she had longed to hear someone call her mom. Her twisted maternal instinct surfaced, and she yanked Piper out of the water, even draping her own sweater over her shivering body. But the danger wasn't over. Oliver, now fully monstrous, lunged at Piper, trying to devour her alive. Piper kicked and shoved him away, sending him sprawling. Blood poured from his swollen belly. Writhing in agony, Oliver stumbled toward the edge of the yard and accidentally crossed the white circle Laura had drawn around the house. The moment he crossed it, he changed. His demonic form faded, his body returning to normal. Meanwhile, Piper ran as fast as she could, desperate to escape. She stumbled into the road and collapsed in front of a car. The driver leapt out, scooped her up, and rushed her to safety. Moments later, police arrived at Laura's house. They found Oliver and rescued him. In the film's haunting post-credit scene, Laura was shown sinking into the swimming pool, clutching the corpse of her daughter. Realizing she could never bring her back, she chose to die alongside her, lost forever in her obsession. And with that chilling image, the movie ended. If you liked the video, then don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.